according to my computer. So we will call the meeting to order. We will first recognize that we are short 2 trustees today, but we still have a quorum. So we will thank you, Trustee Gallier, for showing up. Well, 10 minutes before we start to get nervous. I appreciate you being here. And welcome all of our guests. It looks like we've got some folks that are going to maybe speak to us tonight, so we appreciate everybody being here. We'll start this meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll take just a second and we'll read through, the trustees will read through our mission and vision statement. Marco, you want to lead us off?
Yeah. Mission statement. The mission of the Nampa School District is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student. Vision statement. Every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life.
All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda item.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The next item on the agenda is our favorite, always, is the student spotlight. And I believe, I'm not quite sure who is that you that's doing this, Mr. Wilson here?
Yep.
All right. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Trustees, good evening. We're so excited to be here, and personally, I'm so excited to introduce to you a group that started last year, both for parents and for our students. So it's a small step right now, but a huge step for all those that are involved and our future. So tonight I have 2 advisors of an FHLA group, and they're going to introduce what that is. Here with us, this is Sandra and this is Noe. And then 2 students to speak to you, if you'll come up here with me. That's the good part, right?
Yeah, that's the part. That's what we want to hear.
So, our president last year, this is Yessi. And then our current president, this is Jorge. And they're going to talk you through why they're so awesome.
So senior what? Seniors?
Senior this year, senior last year.
Oh, okay. Right.
But they were the pioneers that started everything.
Wow.
If we could, yep, we got the slides up.
Hello everybody, thank you for having us here tonight. We are future Hispanic students of America. I am Jorge Correa, and I'm the current FHLA president. Me myself, I lived in Mexico for 9 years. I grew up in a violent environment full surrounded with drugs and guns, but I didn't let that define me who I was as a person. I will be a first-generation college student also, and I got raised by this strong woman right there, along with my grandparents till I was about 6 years old.
Hi everybody, my name is Garcia. I was the FHLA president last year. I am a current student at the College of Western Idaho, where I am majoring in business administration with the focus in communications and marketing. I am a first-generation high school graduate and college attendee. I am the oldest of 2 kids, and I was born in Florida and raised in Idaho. So what is FHLA all about? FHLA, or Future Hispanic Leaders of America, is a club of Hispanic and Latino students looking to empower each other and share our cultures. We strive to create a welcoming environment where we encourage success in high school and after high school.
So our history, we actually started a week before spring break, and we got a lot accomplished in the last 2 months of school. We actually started off with the Cinco de Mayo event, which everybody was impressed by it. We got a lot of compliments from teachers and students who wanted us to keep going with our events, have it again next year. When we first started, we started with 1 parent first meeting, and we actually recruited over 25 active members who loved the club. And when we built this club, we didn't only want it to be for students, but also parents. So Hispanic parents really are lost in the education system. We wanted to bump them up and help their kids with their education.
So what is FHLA all about? We're all about building a welcoming home for our Hispanic and Latino students, creating good high school experiences for all our members. We want to encourage guidance and connections among our parents and students to guide them throughout their education, not only creating a connection in your school, but also at their home. We want to encourage higher education or college after high school.
For Club's purpose, we're about inclusion. Every event we made and the Spirit Week we made sure to include everybody, like different cultures and races. It was just not only about Hispanics. We want to demonstrate our Hispanic and Latino students that there's a place for them in high school, because many Hispanics don't really join any clubs and they're just really lost in the high school experience. We want our club to feel a sense of accomplishment, and us as Hispanics, we have the biggest goal in our lives, which is make our parents proud and give back to them, because us as Hispanics feel the need to give back because they sacrificed a lot and moving to a different country they didn't know anything about.
So what is our goal? We want to break the mindsets of our matrix and create an understanding that there is more out there than just hard labor. We want to express and show understanding that us as Hispanics and Latinos are capable of going out there and completing more educations. We want to make our parents' sacrifices worth it. Like Jorge mentioned, they sacrificed a lot moving to this country. A lot of our parents are immigrants, so we want to show them that their sacrifices are worth it. We want to show everybody that we are capable of great things, that we as Hispanic and Latinos, we're capable of growth, we're capable of success.
Yeah, and the future goals we have for this club is we want to go out to other community schools like Endeavor and East Valley and just get the little ones going. We want to show them what it's like to have a welcoming home at high school. And we just, when I first got here to school, I was just really lost since my mom never really made it to high school. And if it wasn't for the teachers helping me out, the College Career Center, I would still be lost and I wouldn't be here today.
So here are some of the photos of our club last year. Most of the photos are from our Cinco de Mayo event. You can see some of our group pictures where we have all our members in there. We started out with one member and we grew, and we're continually growing. We're all about inclusion. We wanted to include the whole school. We had as much things that we can to really show our culture and show who we are, and really could continue encouraging growth among our group.
Yeah, the parents were a big help. They donated most of our food. They helped us volunteer with selling the food. We got everybody dancing around, hitting the piñatas. That picture over there in the corner means a lot to us because we started with one parent and not many participants in our group. And we just grew as a family. This just shows what a loving club can do to Hispanic kids. They're together. Any questions?
I have so many. But I'm just going to have to come to school and I'd love to come and just sit down and talk to you a little bit more about this because I got a lot of. And when you talk about, wanting to show your parents, get back to your parents and make them proud, man, I get chills. I get the goosebumps. I think that's so awesome. Are your parents here?
My mom's right there, yeah.
Congratulations, Mom. What a stellar young man you have raised and continue to raise. So I love it. I think it's just awesome. I can go on and on, but
Yeah.
Trustee.
Super proud of the work that you guys are doing. Super proud that it's in the school. I'm a crier. So genuinely was proud to watch you present. Congratulations. That's just amazing. Does this, just for curiosity for me, are you guys including kids from each of the high schools in the club, or is this just at Columbia right now?
Right now it's just about our school right now. Well, as we go, we're just trying to grow bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can just see it being so impactful across all of the high schools, and I love that outreach is on the list. It felt to me like it's amazing the amount of growth that you guys have had in just 1 year. A lot of adults can't do that, just so we're really clear. So, that's just an amazing feat for you guys. I love that it includes the family as a whole. And I love that you guys are calling out the issues at hand, but also finding solutions on how to deal with them. That's true leadership. So it's just amazing. solution oriented, and the fact that you guys even have goals with like bringing it into the middle schools and then expanding is just phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
It's a tough one. And your presentation was A+, by the
Oh.
way.
Thank you.
I wanted to.
You know, Nampa is there's a lot of Hispanic Latinos in Nampa, right? And a lot of them don't know how to integrate into the community. A lot of them just because of who they are, they feel like they need to surround themselves with other Hispanics and not go out into the world. So sometimes because of that, they put themselves in a position where they could be looked at differently. I love the words inclusive, okay, that you talked about. I went to your website and I saw a lot of words in there that to me represented what I think is so important with what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to become members of the community, successful members of the community. And by allowing not only Hispanic and Latinos, but sharing that, and not only sharing that, but accepting whatever everybody else brings to the table, because there's a lot of different races and communities. Whether Hispanics or whites, we're all equal the same. We're all worth the same, right? Somebody said we're all worth $20, no matter who you are. And I believe that this is a good thing, and I wish I would have had it when I was younger, because in order for me to belong, I had to get in a lot of fights. I won a lot of them, but I lost a lot of them. It wasn't the right way. This is the right way. And just a plug for parents, okay, we need Hispanic parents to be involved. There's not enough at all. Actually, I don't see hardly any. And my hope is that through this club, there's a push for that. And I also want to meet with you guys to see how parents are being included in your organization, and maybe see if I can speak in there or give a plug somewhere in there for parents to be able to be part of communities, be part of the system, that this school district that is in such a need of voices, all types of voices. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As clearly evident in that one picture with Principal Wilson, I can only suspect that's dancing.
Brian, he beat me. Yeah, Brian dances much better than I do.
Clearly, you have the support of the administration and the staff at Columbia, and clearly you have the support of the district. If there's anything that we can do as a board to help you further what you're doing, and anything, please reach out to us. Please reach out to us, reach out to your staff or to your administration. They can reach out to us, but we want to help however we can. So, well done.
Absolutely.
Well done. Very appreciated.
Chairman,
Yes.
to that point and to what you just brought up, every third Monday night is the parent meeting.
Okay.
There's food involved, so if you want to eat dinner with us, it starts at 6 o'clock every third Monday night. And that's the parent meeting.
And I wish there was more clubs that focused on who they are. Even, I don't know, this may be a bad thing to say for some people, but even clubs for people who are from this country, people who are white. What's wrong with that? There's got to be clubs for everyone, right? As long as everybody treats each other with respect and love, everybody deserves to have something where they feel, okay, I can learn about where I'm from. I can teach people where I'm from, and we can all get along because of that. You know what I mean? Because we'll be able to understand each other.
Well, it looks like every third Monday night, especially since there's food there, you may have to post a possible notice of harm.
Especially if it's authentic Mexican.
Yeah, no, that's
I feel that's
awesome.
exactly-
Thank you so much.
Thank
for what
you
do,
again.
and thank you, parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for
All right,
having
you're
us.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's great. I know.
I always want to just end there. You just end up to a student for life. All right, next item on the agenda is the open meeting law. Action item, possible open meeting law violation. So I think we're just going to go to Clerk Lamont, and why don't you just brief us on this?
Perfect. This is just a friendly reminder. So in the board packet, the open meeting law manual is in there. Also, some common ask questions and also options if you do have a violation or cure, how to do that. So we did this as a friendly reminder for all public boards. So this would be your city council, your school board, or your county commissioners, is that you do have to have a function under the open meeting law, and that accidents do happen. So when they do, the board does have the option to cure that. And then the most common asked question, I included that. It's on page 12. And so this just like I said, a quick reminder that you guys do have to do all your business in open session. If you have outside conversations, redirecting them or disclosing or finding out how to handle those. But then if there's an accident and we need to disclose something, we can always correct that there's always ways to move forward in a positive direction. But just a reminder for all public boards in the state, we're kind of doing that throughout. And that is all.
Thank you.
A quick question, actually more just for clarification. So obviously we get a few emails about certain items on the agenda and those not on the agenda.
Correct.
So are those emails, any emails coming to board members is part of the public record? If we bring those up, since they are already part of the public record and we talk about that, do we need to disclose, or can we just say the email is in the record?
Yes, you can just do that. And then also usually when you do that, I try to enclose the actual email in the minutes. But all you have to do is say we received an email from on this topic, so anyone can request those. And the only reason you have to disclose any of that is if you're using any of that information to form a decision or part of the discussion.
On an agenda item or a possible agenda
Yes.
item.
And so that's why you do have to disclose, but all emails sent to the trustees, it doesn't matter if it's from a personal account from someone else or when it comes to school district business, they are subject to public record.
And I haven't checked. I think we all have, Mark, I don't think you do, but our campaign Facebook accounts, the ones that we used, that I think people still, I haven't even looked at mine since the election, really.
So when if you have a campaign page, some of the stuff on there can be subject, but it's usually public. Your personal page is not subject to public record unless you do identify yourself as a trustee.
So those that are coming to that public Facebook page, those are already disclosed. Those are already public. Those are out there. So
right, and so reminding board members, don't make a decision on your public Facebook or have a discussion, because you do have to disclose those or at least have that ready. So if you don't have it open to everyone, it does have to be open when it comes to those public pages.
okay. Any other questions? Clarifications?
I am going to clarify a little bit. So that means if you're messaging people through Facebook Messenger, any sort of platform, and you're discussing school district business, that would be a public record.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item are comments. And so we don't have the Nampa Education Association, or did Brian didn't come in tonight, did he?
No, in the board packet, he has declined to present this meeting.
Okay, so the next item in this agenda item is trustee comments or any updates. Trustee Valier, any comments, any updates?
No, really all I have is just things that I emailed to Greg about just some things that I wanted to look into, like school security. I just want to know what it would be like to have a acceptable or authorized individuals in the school be able to carry weapons if there's a need. I want to see what it's like to. I also want to talk about cell phone usage in the schools, and I'm saying this because these are things that I want to bring up, and I don't want nobody to be surprised like all the time. And also, I did mention in there that I need clarification with regards to sexual identification and pronouns and all those things that I don't know much about. But I know it's in some areas it's causing some questions. So I want to bring that up to the table and see what can be done. But I understand that the school district has started. There's a lot of students out there and a lot of employees, and it's not difficult for something to just trip. Not everything's perfect, but I think it's going pretty darn well. So I want to thank the district and the teachers and everybody involved for putting their time. It's not easy. It's not easy, and sometimes it's easy for people to complain about one incident, but you gotta look at all the thousands of incidents that are pretty positive and that are going like it should be. So thank you so much for the efforts.
But just to clarify, Trustee Valier, those topics you'll discuss with Dr. Russell, are those future agenda items, or are you just looking for information discussion?
I'm looking for information. I know with regard to school security, I want to bring it up as an agenda item, and cell phone usage. So I'm trying to gather information to see what it is that I want to pursue or follow.
Okay. Trustee Taylor.
So I want to echo in the thanks. It was so great to get information from Dr. Russell that we had our first seemingly normal opening this year, and that went rather well. So I'm super excited about that. Grateful for all the staff. Super excited that we had Steered Straight here. Kudos to the staff for making that happen. I felt like it was really great for us to start the school year off on the foot of really talking about vaping, fentanyl. That's been in the news. It's been trending. So I was super excited that I felt as a district we were a little bit ahead of that curve, whereas a lot of those things came up in the news with fentanyl, especially fentanyl that looks like Skittles, just making sure children are really checking their Halloween candy this year. I literally text my 20-year-old. So, but I loved that we led with that. I was super excited because there were some materials that Steered Straight brought. So I was kind of a fan of the presentation, so I went quite a few times. He has a book, it's called Table Talk, and I had utilized that book when I had seen him prior. And what I loved about that is that in some of our updates that we received from Mrs. Tuck, there was some information about, kids, and when you watch that video, it really talked about kids just wanting to be heard. And I thought it was really great because there was a parallel between that book and giving those suggestions, because not every family eats around the dinner table anymore. And there's a lot of sound science in that. And with that book, it really talked about different opportunities, whether it's 5 minutes going to Dutch, because that's what every Idaho teenager does. I swear I should own stock in Dutch. But I just felt like it gave a lot of ideas, and I thought it was another really great way to bring parents in. So in my meeting with Dr. Russell this week, I'm going to be talking to him about just sending out a message possibly around that book to parents. But I just felt like that was great. And then I also met with Michael after he had talked to each school. I know that there was a lot of hard things dealt with in every school, and every school just, really accepted him with open arms. But I just want to give a special shout out to Gateways. They do a ton for this community, and I'm just super, super grateful for all of our staff there as well. And they just show up every day, and they just really recommit to their kids in just extraordinary ways. And so I definitely sent them a personal thank you, but just really, again, want to give them a shout out for their program.
Thank you. Just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I spent a couple of days with Mr. De Leon after the presentations in the schools, and his comments were nothing but positive. He was very excited to come and speak to all the schools. I think he spent probably what felt like weeks here, because I think he was just doing nonstop schools. But he says he goes, I don't know how many thousands of schools he goes to. Also saw just today an article in Idaho Ed News about teacher proficiency in the school districts in Idaho. And I just want to give a shout out especially what Trustee Valli said, is the teachers in this district. I think the district was at 98.2 or 98.4%. I think to me that's just huge. There were some districts that were at 100%, but 98% is pretty dang good. I mean, you can't get much more perfect than that. So I didn't go into a whole lot of detail and depth on that report, but just looking at the listings and seeing the 98.4% that Nampa School District teachers are at, just made me feel proud that they really are. We really have some fantastic teachers in this district. So just another shout out to them. And I think that's all I had for comments. I'll probably think of it later. But. All right, do we have?
I just grabbed the public comment sign-in sheets, and we don't have anyone signed up for any of the topics.
All right. That being said, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is our consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I did have a couple of questions
On the consent agenda.
on the consent agenda.
You want to move those out of the consent agenda, or do you just have some quick?
Yeah, it's going to be real quick, so I'll move them out.
1 second. Do I need to do anything with the motion? Okay.
No, it's just hasn't been seconded. So.
Hold on, I'm looking at my notes. With regards to the Skyview High volleyball.
Mm-hmm. To Ohio.
Yeah, I had a question about that, so I'm gonna move it up. Or can I just ask the question?
Ask the question because I think we have an answer to it.
I'm just wondering how this is treated because there's a private donor who's paying the bill for the entire thing. This is very expensive, and I'm not quite sure I understand how this is treated with regards to private donors and I mean, do we have to disclose everything, or do we need to know who they are?
So it's private, really private.
Yeah, it's like private. is private.
ESPN is putting this on for our volleyball team and 3 other volleyball teams. It's an event they did last year for the first time, and it's for the top programs and high schools in the nation. And this year we were selected to be part of those 4. Each year, this is only the second year, so they chose a different 4, and they came to us and asked us if we'd like to be a part of it. And we said, of course we would. It's a great opportunity for our girls. It's a great opportunity for our families. It's a great opportunity for the city of Nampa. We're going to put on a show. We're not going to just go to hang out. We're going to go to win. They're footing the bill on this whole thing.
Wow.
There was no application process
No,
or anything
they
like
came-
that. It's just like out of the blue, here comes ESPN.
They came to us. We got an email, and they said, we'd like to invite you to this tournament. And we were like, okay, all right, let's go. What do we got to do? Where do we got to sign up? And a lot of it has to do with our program. I mean, if you look at the history of the Skyview volleyball program, Mr. Barber's here as well. He can back me up on this. We played in the last 7 state championships, whether it's 4A or 5A, and we won 4 out of 7. We have 3 girls that play at BYU right now. We have 1 at Dartmouth. We have 2 at NNU. We have 1 committed to BYU. They're all sisters. And we have 1 committed to Oregon. So we've had a lot of success. And the one thing about our program, they travel. I mean, they went down to Las Vegas last year, and I think they beat the 2nd-ranked team in the nation. And this is what got people excited. That's what got the attention, exactly. And other coaches talk about our program. So I think it kind of came down to, hey, kind of that David and Goliath thing. Here's a little small town Idaho school that's pretty dang good. They're going to Las Vegas. They're beating some big time schools, and that's where we got invited. So like I said, it's a great opportunity for our kids. What I mean, all expenses paid. Wow. Flights, hotel, food. We got our own bus driver. We'll have a big old bus to kind of chauffeur us around. It'll be pretty cool. We'll be on ESPN on the 7th and 8th. I think first night is ESPN 2, and I think the second night is ESPN. Wow. Yeah, so if we lose the first one, we're playing no matter what the next day. So you got 4 really good programs, and our girls are crazy excited. And it was kind of a nerve-wracking thing because we got it and it was like, is this real? So we never thought this would ever happen. I mean, Coach Murphy never thought it would happen, but we started doing some research. I happened to sit in on a phone call with the lady that's the director of the whole program. I was like, wow. It was like, okay. She's like, this is like, holy smokes, just for high school, you never imagine that.
What's your name again?
My name is Eric Bonds. I'm the athletic director at Stanley High School.
Wow. Well, is there any way I can go with you? I'll be up for 10, coach.
You might have to.
We may have to notice a quorum, a notice of quorum on that one too.
No, I'm just.
But you better watch us. That's for sure. You know.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I mean,
It's amazing.
it's not me. It's our volleyball program and our coach Murphy and all the coaches. They've done an exceptional job over the years, and they're just building our program, and it's going to continue to go. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, our kids are representing their families, which are representing Skyview also, but also the city of Nampa. As we get there, they're going to say, "Where's Nampa?" They're going to think it's Nampa Valley in California. We're in Nampa in Idaho, so it's going to be pretty cool.
Trustee Taylor had a question or a comment.
Well, it was just a comment. I think that because my daughter played varsity volleyball last year, so I follow you guys. I'm like, oh, I know all those girls. So I'm so glad you asked the question because I forget that it's just not common knowledge, but I mean they kill it in volleyball. Like just kill it. So our family. I mean, you would have my husband at the word ESPN, but like our family follows that program. It's just excellent. So I'm so glad you got a chance to talk about it.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
And just for quick clarification, because I know in these consent agenda items, sometimes some things might get in there that might seem like we're just kind of pencil whipping things through, and sometimes we've had questions on this, and we've asked the staff to provide a little bit more detail in some of these out-of-state travel.
Yeah.
But there's a specific reason why there wasn't a whole lot of detail provided this. So could you just kind of explain that so everyone can
when we first got contacted and we kind of accepted, it was hush hush. I mean, we could not put it out because ESPN wanted to be the ones to put it out. They wanted to get it out on the Twitter sphere and the social media. We could not do anything. All we did, we were able to talk to our parents. We sat down, had a good talk with the parents and the players, and said, "Hey, if this gets out before ESPN releases it, we could be in jeopardy of losing our spot in this." So our parents and our kids were great. They were great. But once it dropped, I think it was last week, it was like it blew up.
Yeah.
We got a lot of texts and coaches around the area that were pretty excited for us and congratulating us. So well deserved. Well deserved.
Okay. So that's why, trustees, in case you were wondering why all of that information wasn't included, because
we were really stressed. We were hoping
we didn't want to ruin it for them
before this day because we knew we had to come talk about it. And I talked to Mr. Buzz, like, is there any way I can talk to the board behind closed doors just to kind of let them know, because we couldn't let it out until they were ready to release it. So
Yeah.
Good job.
Kill it. Yeah.
Good job. Thank you so much. I second that motion.
So a motion has been made to approve the consent agenda items and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So, next item is disposal designee. Dr. Russell, I believe this one is.
Chair Kirkman,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Chair Kirkman, trustees, before us tonight is our school board policy 9100 with our designee of disposing of property of $500 or less. Currently, right now, that is a former employee of ours, Mr. Jers, and we're looking forward to having Mr. Stoffer be on that. And so I'm asking for an action item today to move Mr. Jers, who's no longer an employee with the district, and put Mr. Stoffer on in that spot.
I motion to name Courtney Stoffer as the district designee for disposal of district property totaling less than $500.
A second. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving so fast, I can't keep up. Challenge book procedure proposal.
So Chair Cookman and trustees, tonight before us is our challenge book procedure proposal. This is something that the board has been discussing for some time and had some work sessions on. I have Mr. Scott Knopf today that he will come and kind of share some information, and I'm asking him to come forward.
Good evening. So I did give you guys a hard copy there, kind of the same procedure we've been working through. So if you want to take some notes or write on it, or sometimes reading it in hand instead of on the computer, works a little bit better. So.
I wondered how I got to. So I was like, oh, did I
there you go.
device
Yep,
for myself?
that's
So
why
I'm
you
really
have
glad
to.
you said that.
So,
Thank you.
You'll notice there the text that is highlighted is after the August work session. I should say added or edited or reworded or tweaked. And then the other item to just point out, under guiding principles in the yellow highlight on the copy I gave you, that still has the 3 options. We'll need to land on one of those 3 in the text in regards to that particular principle.
All right.
Good.
And I already read all of this, so I'm ready for discussion.
Okay, Trustee Valier, are you ready for discussion?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll give you the floor.
Okay, there's, with regards to the highlighted item, I want to propose that we can choose that will remain with restrictions. Being that we don't really understand or fully know the damage that book can cause, but it can still be available. Maybe give it to the library to put it under her, whatever, in a place so if somebody wants it, they can still, with parent consent, they can still get it out. So, because I don't think it's until it's fully gone through the process that it should be removed altogether. And then, that's one part.
Okay.
Then I was reading under the selection, criteria for selection of library supplemental materials, and I don't know, to me, there's one part that we're giving guidance that is pretty general, but I would like to be a little more direct with regards to guidance, with regards to any book that sexualizes children in any way, shape, or form. I would like to see if we can put that as a criteria to not select that book. Any book that contains graphic sex. I believe that is a criteria that is not needed. Everything can be taught without that. And material that contains obscene or vulgar language, I believe everything can be taught without the usage of things or words that are really unneeded. Reminds me of movies. I saw this movie by this not Hawaiian, it was an island group, and they have a king, I think it's Tonga, a king and a queen, anyways, at the start of the movie, they put in there that they apologized to the king and queen for the use of vulgar words that they were going to use in the movie because they felt like that was real life. But then I was like, okay, I'm going to see this movie, and my wife and I were in agreement that there's really no reason for that to be in there. A lot of the F words that didn't even go into the subject matter. It was just thrown in there for I don't know. It didn't make sense to me. So I would like some type of direction given with that type of criteria to be included in this. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Trustee Taylor, and then I'll go ahead.
Sure. Gosh. So, did you get to meet with Michael from Stirred Straight? Have you gotten the opportunity to do that?
No, I had COVID during that
time.
I
So
missed.
he has a really compelling diary by one of his overdose victims, and I've now been able to read that diary. It was a book that he generally gives out during his presentation, and it's filled with 4-letter words. But we're also talking about an overdosing heroin addict, which definitely is relevant based on some of the information that Michael did share with me. Just that he did experience in our schools. So I'm with you on, I want there to be some good criteria around selection because I feel like that's what got us into this place in the first place is that there was nothing, set around like how do we choose materials. But I mean, we definitely have children of drug addicts in our school.
Yeah, my question would go, first of all, on your comment about the yellow highlighted part on page 2, guiding principles, I agree with Trustee Valier that will remain with restriction.
Ditto.
And then to your comments about the criteria, when you were talking about sexualization of children, that seems to be like a hot topic and everyone's talking about it. I always go to how is that determined? I can look at something and go, yeah, that's sexualization of children, but that's just my opinion. And so I really want to make sure that we have a really good understanding of what that is. And I don't know that anyone really, at this point, in obscenity, the definition of obscenity is you'll know it when you see it. But again, that goes to individual and personal and so on and so forth. So it just really, I don't know how we get there. I don't know how we get there. And if we try to regulate down to the minute details, and maybe not even minute, but the details of how those particular books are selected, we do need to give deference to the professionals in this realm. I mean, that's why they are in positions where they are in. And I think, in my opinion, as a trustee, to try to regulate that kind of detail, oh my gosh, that's all we'd be doing, really, is managing. And I think that managing obviously goes with the staff. I have great concern over sexualization of children. I have very strong opinions on a lot of it, and you'll probably hear a lot of those as we continue this discussion and further down the road on different topics. But I just, in the language, I mean, my background, I live with that language on a daily basis in my profession, and so that's just something that I've gotten used to. That doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean we should accept it, because it doesn't happen in our house, in our home, and I'm sure a lot of others. But you know, a kid pops onto social media, that's all that's there is vulgarity, and you know that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make us the gatekeepers and the morality police. And that's really what I don't want to get to, if that makes any sense. So I agree with what you're saying. I just don't know how we're going to get to that point in a process like this.
Well, maybe if we have a little time, I can gather some information to help you understand how we can get there. Because, you know, if we go by your argument, then everything needs to be allowed no matter what, because there's no way to define what it is. When you talk about the moral police and as determining what people can see or not, then we shouldn't be discussing the flag issue or the what do you call it, what people put on walls, or we shouldn't be discussing really books. You know, everything goes, because who's the one that determines? Our job is to protect kids and protect children. And because the world changes doesn't mean we have to change. And I believe that we have every right and duty to create policy that kind of mirrors what the community wants. I mean, you look at all the different things in the news all over the place, and it's not only the news, but movies and things. I mean, even Disney movies are talking about orgies. The last one that Thor came out, and they're making things be normal because that's what, you know, the world wants. That doesn't mean that's what we need. That's what our children need. And if we're going to look at professionals, I suggest that we look at professionals that know this, like psychologists and people that, just because you are a librarian doesn't mean you know what's good for kids or not. To me, I don't believe that. To me, we need to look at professionals who deal with children all the time and to see what is good for them. Is it good for them for us to introduce all these sexual things to them when they're young? Are we supposed to be parents? Well, if the parents don't know how to do it, then we have to be able to protect the kids anyways. So I believe we have a duty to implement something that makes sense. And I don't believe we're the only ones that have done it. I bet you there's other school districts that have moved forward with something that kind of protects. Maybe they don't have that exact answer, but it's still from this big thing without borders, they kind of bring it down so that our kids are protected somewhat. Of course, they cannot be fully protected, but we gotta do our best. And protect it from what? I mean, some people may think, you know what, there's nothing wrong with kids smoking. I know there's parents that think that, but we know that's harmful. And we know that sex is harmful, not just sex, but pornography is harmful for kids. I mean, psychologists have been saying that for a long time. And all of these things, we have to create some type of a policy to help our children. And I think that this is what, maybe I'm not defining it correctly, but I think we need to look for something that's very impactful and something that gives a little more guidance than just being open-ended.
Well, and Trustee Gallia, to your, I 1000% agree with you. Everything you said, I really do agree with you. And I think that the process that we're looking at here, which is what we're considering, is the process of how to challenge those books. Yes, there will be selection criteria, and even if that selection criteria may not meet what the standards of some folks might be, and they get into the library, the process provides them an opportunity, and that's why I really wanted to make it we wanted it to be clear, and any book can be challenged. And it goes through that process and even up to the board. And at that point, we will review that challenged book if it gets all the way to that level and make a decision whether that book is allowed or not. So I appreciate the challenge process, and I think that's really what we're looking at here. I agree with you. There's some books that should not be in the to our kids based on all the reasons that you said. But we're looking at the process tonight, and I think this process will address concerns that anybody in the community may have. And I do appreciate the fact that we did put in here, I think it's in the form, that it's a resident or employee of the school district may formally challenge libraries. So it's not library material, so it's not somebody in San Francisco or somebody in New York that's challenging these. It's somebody an employee or a resident or employee of the school district may formally challenge. And that's in that guiding principles thing. So that does focus on the community standards of Nampa that have the ability to challenge those books and run it through this process.
If I can say something to that, I see where you're coming from, but I also believe that if we were able to narrow down this criteria and include some of these things, that we will not have people questioning. We will not have people. We will decrease the number of materials that people are going to question and bring to the district as something that needs to go. I think we have the opportunity to do that here.
The question then goes to how do we get to that detail? And that's why I think the process, no matter what that book looks like or what that book is, can be challenged. But I think trying to get it on the front end is the most difficult thing, rather than have that process in place that they can run that book through. So I get where you're going. My question is just like, how do we get to that point? I don't know. There's so many variables and.
No, I totally understand it. Maybe I need to propose a little more time with regards to that part. I want to do this right, because once it's done, it's done. And maybe we need to do a little more research to see if there's a possibility to do it in a way, or if it's been done in a way where it meets or it's able to answer your questions as you have, if that's possible. Is that something I can suggest?
Certainly, you can suggest it. Trustee Taylor, do you have any comments or anything? Not that.
Nope. This conversation is going how I felt that it would go based on our meetings. I definitely felt that would be the sticking point, because I think we want to drill that in. I think that my question is I see right here that we say responsibility for selection in Board Policy 2510. which gives the responsibility for material selection to the building principal. The principal may further delegate the responsibility to the librarian in the school. I'm with you. I want us to stay out of the weeds. I love the idea of having a very clear-cut and concise way for us to challenge those materials. Because there's books in the library still, as told by our librarians, that are, some of them worse than the books that were taken off the shelf. So I'm not against giving you more time because I want us to be a cohesive board. I just don't. I'm like-minded with Jeff. Where how long do we take to say I curse. I sprinkle. I sprinkle curse words into sentences like they're salt when I'm not up here, and so when we start to have those tit for tat conversations, and my husband and I, our exes are heroin addicts, so this is always a really touchy conversation for me to have because a lot of what you're saying are things that my children have been exposed to and we discuss. So yeah, I think that the more we discuss this, we get into those weeds with what you would find appropriate, what I would find appropriate, what we would find appropriate together. A strong challenge process, I think, gives those things back to the board. There's a few things that I think that we could change as far as I know that we had discussed, like the board being triggered immediately once something was challenged so that we were a part of the process. I'm still big on, I would love a lot of these things to be recorded for Zoom in case we have to go back through the process so that we can review what those things were, but just because I like to review and I like to have accurate information.
So just a quick question on the board being notified when a challenge starts. I think that if I'm not mistaken in our work session, that was discussion point so that we would know and have the opportunity to
Correct.
Get the book.
Go get the book and start the process with them and so on and so forth. And then one of the things is that I think that we can remember that, we are the board of trustees and we can go back to things when necessary. So,
and this is not a policy, this would not be a policy change.
No.
It's simply, it's a procedural change.
Correct.
So procedures are a lot easier to change than policies, if needed.
But I'm not against what you're saying. I definitely felt like there was a couple of those books that even I questioned why they were specifically on the shelf.
Can I give just a little bit of insight?
Please do.
So the criteria for the selection, so that sheet, this probably falls more into policy than procedure. I think the reason it's part of this packet is whatever the policy is the guardrails that the panels would kind of use when evaluating said selection when it was in front of them. So maybe the answer to the current debate is yes and yes. That the procedure itself, when you pull out this criteria page, it sounds like we're all in agreement that looks pretty good. And then maybe this is a policy question in regards to what do we want the selection of supplemental materials. What's the guidelines for that?
Chair Curtsy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Trustee Nalier.
I just wanted to say that I totally agree with what you're saying. I'm just questioning that second part because I agree with the policy. I think you've done a phenomenal job of putting it all together for us. Or with the criteria for challenging goods. I did have one more question with regards to the form that parents use. Just to throw it in there really quickly before I forget. I know we talked about it the last time, and the third question where it says, have you read the entire content of this material? And I asked, why do we need to have that in there? Well, I believe the answer was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, well, it doesn't have to be in there, but it's just good. It's just good to know, right? Or what was the answer for that? Do you remember that?
I do. The answer was so that we would know the context of the sentence before. So it was just in case there was a part that was hard to get through in case it had actual impactful meaning. So we didn't necessarily want to read about somebody using drugs, but maybe it went to their overdose story that led to the story the person was telling. So we had just asked that they read the material in its entirety so that they understood the entirety of the book.
Right. And so to me, number 4, what are your main concerns about these materials? that's something where you can put in there, because I know I mentioned the last time, and I think Jeff agreed, or the chairman agreed, that not everybody wants to read a whole book once it starts talking about things they don't like. And personally, me, as soon as I start seeing something very graphic, I put it away. I mean, I don't.
Right.
And I know a lot of parents believe the same way.
Trustee Valley, in that conversation, the work session, what we said is that is not a disqualifier for this complaint moving forward. It just brings context to where you're at. So if your answer is no, that doesn't mean that your objection here ends.
Then why even have it in
just
there?
gives context.
Yeah, then why even have it in there when they can explain their concern about the material in question number 4, which would require them to answer the parts that they don't agree with.
Is 4 just redundant? Is that what you're asking? It's 4?
Yes.
Okay. In 3, it does.
I mean, I think 3 is redundant and 4 needs to remain, because 4 is, they go to the specifics of what they know or understand or have read. But 3, I'm not going to read the entire book once I believe there's crap in it.
Right, and I guess the way I read it is you just answer yes or no on number 3, and then you explain either the yes or the reasons behind the no on number 4. And maybe we need to look at maybe just wording those questions slightly different.
If on number 4, if yes, what are your main concerns about this material? If yes to number 3, what are your main concerns about this?
Or no.
Yeah, or no.
And you could say I read to page 62 and in this particular section, here's what I ran across, and I have a problem with that, and I did not continue reading the book.
Chairman Kirkman, just listening to this conversation, it almost sounds like we need to review and update the current policy, and then maybe also and have that at the next meeting. But also maybe if have Marco meet with Mr. Knopf ahead of time to discuss some of his concerns that they could present at the next meeting, and making sure that the policy is updated with some of the criteria. And just because you want to make sure your policy is aligned with your procedure, and in your current policy it says hot topics, or I think it says controversial items or something, that the procedure has to be approved by the board. So that's why that is also your guys' role right now. But I think if you're talking about updating the policy and the procedure, you should do both rather than just one at a time.
You're talking about policy 2510.
I believe so. I don't have it up because I have my minutes up, but I think that it sounds like Trustee Valier does have some more questions.
Well, I'm looking at policy 2510 and I don't see any hot.
I believe it says controversial items. Let me look at it on that policy.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, another policy that might be helpful in this whole discussion is policy 2340, controversial issues.
Yes,
academic freedom.
thank you. And procedures.
It just doesn't pertain to library books specifically, but it does speak about just dealing with the general concerns that the board is speaking of.
Trustee Kirkman, they're really only asking us to approve the material reconsideration procedure as it's presented. I think that we can chunk this both policy and procedure. What I don't love is that right now we don't have anything in play. And so part of that leads to what are we going to do if this problem persists? Because we don't have any way if things are brought to our attention to even go about that we've agreed on, because we basically kind of halted that process in its entirety. So I'm with you though, because I do believe that a large portion of our community feels the way that you do, Trustee Valier. So I would like for us to find a common ground and something that we can agree to, but I do think that we're having a policy versus procedure conversation, and I think if we're all good with this particular procedure, or maybe there's just a couple of things that we want to change on the procedure, it is my understanding, and Clerk Lamont, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we could approve this procedure because that's what we're being asked to do, and then if we want to take a look at that policy, that could be done at a separate time.
You could, but it sounds like the criteria should be, we're not approving that with the procedure is what I just heard. Is that what I heard Mr. Knopf say? The criteria would be more of the policy instead of the procedure? So the criteria wouldn't, is that part of the procedure or not? 'Cause it sounds
It's
like
not. I think that this
Okay.
was put here for reference is what I understand you saying. Is that correct, Mr. Knopf? Is that when you're saying that this right here, the selection procedures for Nampa School District supplemental materials?
Correct. So the page that has the criteria there, all I pointed out was that this is probably falls more under policy. I don't even know if it is in our policy, but I was saying that the procedure is going to, if this was policy, we would adjust procedure obviously to match that. But this is here for guardrails and kind of a rubric to go off of for the panels if they get to the point where they're evaluating the book.
And when putting this together, where was this pulled from? Was this something of your, is this a document of your design, or is this
So
something
this document was put together by staff last winterish. So when kind of this all was picking up steam back in January, February, so some librarians, some administrators, I believe Director Mon, they looked at some other criteria selection policies that were out in other districts, and then kind of sat down and built this on what was going on. So I inherited this. I've tweaked very little on this particular page, but from the get-go, once I got involved, I read this as, like I said, providing guardrails for the committee/panel to go off of as they evaluated the book being changed.
I appreciate that. I just am not sure that based on what we're being asked to consider, that this document actually has a place in what's particularly here. We're
That's
just,
that confusing part.
is that the confusing part?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
If I could ask Mr. Knopf, Mr. Knopf, would, if we were to take that portion out and move forward with the other procedural pieces, do you think that would be, understanding that we have to come back at some point because there needs to be some guardrails for the panels to be able to make decisions? Do you think we could possibly move forward if there were to be a motion of some sort without that piece in it?
Sure.
So I'm looking at the policy, and the only thing in this policy 2510 that looks like it would need to be changed in accordance or to make it viable with this procedure is the last paragraph. It says the district will not allow books, tracts, papers, or catechisms of sectarian nature. Any individual may challenge the selection of materials for the library. The uniform grievance procedures. This is to be used. That's in this policy, but
Right.
if we approve this, that will have to change to.
Right, that's why it's, so a couple things. Policy 1310 is the administrative procedures that I was just talking about. Those needs to go through the board for approval. And so since it's not aligned with your current policy, because it's saying the grievance process, that you need to update your policy along with your procedure. So you really need to just do both of them at the same time.
Because we can't do we can't do this before the policy, and we can't do the policy if there's not something in place.
Correct, because it does still say you have to go through the uniform grievance process.
And as we think about that for a second, I do want to ask a question because I remember I left my notes in my other bag. But I did remember the current list of books that have been challenged and have been removed. Just from a logical perspective, how are those 22 or 25 books or whatever, how are they going to get through this process? Because that's a lot of books to move through this timeline, if this timeline were to be approved.
Can I love you. Can we not ask that question at this meeting? So this has come to us so many times, and if it's a question of policy versus procedure, we have talked about this and talked about this and talked about this. So I would really like us to get really clear in this meeting about what our direction is to staff. So are we asking for them to bring the policy to us? Do we need to have a work session about policy? Because I'm with you. I feel like the policy overlying are the guardrails that we need, but we're only being asked about procedure tonight. Approving this procedure takes us out of alignment with policy. So that should just answer our question that we have to address policy first.
Well,
or same time.
I think to defer on you guys, but I did just update the board packet. So policy 1310 is in the current board packet along with policy 2510 under this topic if you refresh it. But I think what you might want to do is have a work session to make sure everything's aligned with your updating the policy and the procedure to make sure that's done. I know that's not what anyone wants to do, but I think if you do it at another regular board meeting and as an action item, without seeing it and having a conversation, it's not going to be completely updated in the line unless the staff and the board thinks just moving forward at the next board meeting with them updating policy and the procedures as discussed.
I'm willing to do whichever.
We can't take care of that now.
Pardon?
If we change the uniform grievance procedure in 2510, can we do that now at this meeting?
It's not on the agenda, and you can only take action. You can only take action on that are specifically on the agenda, and that's per Idaho code and open meeting law.
Okay.
So I just want us to leave with very direct clarity as to what we're asking for. I'm talking to the two.
So there's nothing in this procedure that needs to be changed. I'm talking about level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4.
You felt good with that?
I feel good with that.
Okay.
Other than will remain with restrictions, rather than those 3 options, that if a book is challenged, it will remain in the library, but it will still have restrictions.
I was good with will remain with restrictions as well.
I included in my board meeting minutes because it sounded like you guys also wanted the board to be notified when.
Yeah, just to.
So that needs to probably be in the procedure as well. Each time it goes through like initial or updates on where it's at. And so I included that. And then I don't know where Trustee Taylor was, but she did talk about transparency and live streaming.
Since we've gone through this entire process, I can't tell you how many times I wished I could go back and watch a Zoom when one of these conversations was had, just because I feel like it clears up a lot of things. Because the biggest complaint that we get is that the book was within somebody's ideology. And so when I don't have anything to refer back to, or I don't have anything to watch, it's difficult. I love the idea of live streaming. I did take a look because there was concern whether we called it panel committee. I love the word panel. Definition was a small group of people chosen to give advice, make a decision, or publicly discuss their opinions as entertainment. Right? So that being said, and again, it's not a sticking point for me if you two don't feel that that needs to be there, because I feel like we're moving along well. If we're updated and we can call on the people and call on the panel, that's good as well. So not a sticking point.
But you're talking about any of these panels, whether it's level 2 or level 3.
I just think it's a great idea when people meet to discuss things that will eventually come to us to give us as much foundational knowledge or like institutional knowledge as what we'll need. Because what I've experienced with how many questions that I have at times, just to make sure that I'm getting as much information as I can from as many people as involved, it's difficult sometimes to come by that information if we don't know what was discussed, or then there's side conversations. So I just feel like it just makes everything very transparent in the discussion.
Dr. Russell?
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, Trustees, just a couple of comments on that, just so that the board can understand some context of what that may entail. So first of all, obviously transparency is really important to understand that being part of a public school district and a public board, I think we all speak of that and understand the importance of it. If we were to move forward with broadcasting and all of those, the amount of work that might be on staff, it may require us to hire more staff to be able to make sure that broadcasting is being there, it's being done. I'm looking at Tyler, I'm looking at Cody. There is a requirement on that as well. And then the second one that may come up is just a concern of finding panel members to sit on these if these are going to be very difficult topics to speak about, and trying to recruit and find folks to be able to do on that to make sure that we have a solid panel that's as unbiased as possible. There could be some difficulties in that. So just some things to think about.
Do you think, Dr. Russell, somebody who might be selected or chosen to be on a panel to review a book may not want to if it is recorded and made public, or may not be as open to discuss because they might be targeted, or they might be questioned a little bit more in detail, or whatever the case might be?
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, Trustees, there's a possibility of that. I think it's just something to consider. I can't speak for anyone, obviously, but I think it's it would put, it's a microscope, and some people are fine with that, and other people may not. And we all have a lot going on in our lives, and do I want to be a part of that or not? I can tell you from experience, getting folks to sit on committees and be a part of committees is not always the easiest thing. I'm asking folks to participate and give up their time. And you all understand volunteering and what that means and the amount of incredible work and time it is. So it's time away from family and work and loved ones and those kind of things. So just to throw it out there for thought.
And like I said, I'm willing to heed that advice because I mean, we're going to need people who are willing to read the books as well.
All right. So what do you think, Trustee Valley on that particular point?
A work session.
What's that?
I believe we need a work session.
Yeah, I think that's what we've decided. But aren't we trying to give as much clarity to the staff going forward? So I think what we were doing was trying to decide within this supplemental material reconsideration procedure, was there much more that we wanted changed? Or other than that, because we were all in agreement with the reading of restrictions, and I was fully willing to move off of the recording.
No, I've read this about 4 or 5 different times, and I'm okay with all that.
Okay, perfect. So I think that's really good. So I think from here, it's going to be more about that policy. Do we have any direction for Mr. Knopf on policy?
On 1310, I don't think there's anything in 1310 that needs to be.
So could our direction just be that we would like administration or staff to work with our board clerk to get everything in alignment with policy before it's represented to us or before the work session?
And just clarification for Chairman Kirkman, it's policy 2510.
I know, I was going to say that next.
Okay, just to make sure.
Yeah, 2510, and I think really is make sure that that's in alignment with whatever procedure might be in place for this process, rather than the uniform grievance procedure.
Right.
Sure, Cookman, could you maybe expand upon that policy 2510, how you maybe envision that and see it matching the current procedure that we just discussed?
I think just simply it could be a very simple statement as to whatever that process. I mean, whatever the title of this process is going to be, that's the process that will be used to challenge the books. And instead of the grievance procedure, the uniform grievance procedure will go through this, whatever the title of this might end up being.
I would also add, as part of your guys' discussion, and I think we're all hearing the same thing, but just to clarify and make sure we're moving forward, is the board also discussed with Mr. Knopf's clarification on the criteria that was discussed, that the criteria needs to be added to the policy, but maybe I misheard him because he said that was more of policy on the criteria versus
I think maybe the criteria is something that we can maybe discuss in a work session.
Or the work session.
So that would be that what he could update and put in the policy to see where it would fit.
So I think that will be the topic of discussion, was my understanding, because I just wanted to make sure we give you plenty of direction for this next work session, so you do not have to redo all of this work.
Right.
I think that we're all in alignment with that. The procedure is great. So if that's what we're going to discuss, that's wonderful. But the whole point of getting clarification was so that you understood what to bring. And I just want that work session to be very understood what we're there for.
On the selection procedures for not the
2510 on library materials.
So the two policies, 1310 and 2510, are they both needing to be reviewed? Because 1310 was admin procedures and 2510 was what needed aligned?
Right, so it's just 2510. I was just adding 1310 so the board understood why, and the public understood why the board was talking policy and procedure.
Right.
Understood why. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty sure there's nothing in that policy.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know.
2510. So that being said, Mr. Knopf, is there, all right, it clear as mud?
Yeah.
Let's make sure we get this.
No, I think I got a pretty good grasp of what we're looking for.
I think the procedure.
I'll make just a couple tweaks on what we do have here before that work session, and then I can collaborate with Dr. Russell, and we'll figure out kind of some possible draft policies that would go along and support this procedure and the criteria for selection, which
Perfect.
is on the front end.
And if possible, I would love to meet with you. You can send me a meeting invite to whatever time
Sure.
you have available.
So we don't need a motion on this one then, I would assume, because we're just going into work session, or do we need that motion? motion to table.
Yeah, it's an action item.
I would say a sample could be motion to table to a work session, including policy 2510 selection of library materials.
Motion to table challenge book procedures for work session to review policy 2510 selection of library materials.
Review and update, yes.
Review and update policy 2510 selection of library materials.
I second.
Okay, motion's been made, it's been seconded. Any discussion on that motion at this point? All in favor?
Aye. Mr.
Opposed?
Mr. Knopf, thank you for your time on this.
Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, I was trying to move that little hand down on my computer. Guess it doesn't quite work up there. Policy 2700 high school requirements, Dr. Russell.
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, trustees, before us tonight is policy 2700, the high school graduation requirements. The state of Idaho has essentially two laws that public schools need to follow, Idaho code obviously, but also Idaho rule from the state board called IDAPA. This year, in the last session, IDAPA was changed around the math requirements for high school students. It previously had read that high school students must take a math course. They have to take 6 credits. Some of those credits have to be taken, at least 2 of those, in their senior year of math. That was changed into the junior year of math. This spring, because of that change, we began to build our course catalogs around that rule. And began to ask our juniors to take a math course. Speaking with our high school principals, that was a positive change, because what we were seeing our students doing is they were taking a gap year, if you will, in math. Taking integrated 1 as a freshman, integrated 2 as a sophomore, a gap year. And then, like many students, probably myself as well, did not have the desire to go back and take a challenging math course a senior year, most likely, and would take a lower level math. And so what we would propose is to change the policy so that it reads and follows IDAPA code that requires our students to take math as a freshman, sophomore, and junior. And what that would do is then allow us benefits. So if a student were to possibly fail as a junior, you would have your opportunity as a senior to get that extra 2 credits, which in the previous rule would not have allowed that. That would have required summer school. And the second thing is it'll also allow the students that do want to go on into a college to be able to take a higher level course or a dual credit course. So before you is a proposal to change that. You'll see there's sorry, I got to get there on my computer. A draft policy that we have there that shows the red lines of the current IDAPA code. And I'm happy to open that up to discussion.
Any students, so students who are juniors this year who don't have a math class, how will this affect that?
I'm going to look at Mr. Lagoon and answer
I
that
think we're
question.
all looking at Mr. Lagoon.
Yes, he did the best.
So, we, in anticipation of, for just that very reason, because the state rule had changed, the guidance from the state, we scheduled accordingly. So not making this move could be a challenge, a real challenge for some students that were not currently enrolled in a math class.
Did you say not making this change?
Yes, if we didn't make the change.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I just couldn't fully hear. Maybe just stay up. I just had a couple of questions not surrounding that. So my questions all are around the college entrance exams, because it wasn't covered in our explanation. So do you guys want to explain that before I go into my questions? Because maybe the explanation will be in your answer.
Yes. Yes. So there's 2 pieces to clarify. First of all, we are required to offer those college exams. So we provide the opportunity for students to take them. However, the state no longer requires students to take them. So for a handful of students, it's been kind of a challenge. Some of our special needs students who were maybe taking those exams but did not intend to go that direction. It could have been kind of problematic for some of them. And the other piece is, I think in some ways, and I may editorialize here just a little bit, I think some students feel like the only way to go is college. And I think there's a lot of honor in career and technical education that doesn't require that entrance exam. So that's why I would endorse removing it as a requirement.
So do we still have to report our SAT numbers to the state?
We would still be reporting those for the ones who participate, but
And
only
do
for
we,
those
is there
participating.
any, just so I understand it, there's no monies tied to those at all, right? Like
No.
that's just it happens or it doesn't. And so there's no monies tied to it, but does the state reimburse us for those who do take it?
So the cost is covered.
Cost
yes.
is covered.
Mhm.
Okay, that's all. I just,
Okay.
there wasn't that explanation, so I just wanted to ask.
And to that point, we were still working on getting some clarification. We understood it to be that way, but we were double and triple checking and made some calls. And so I apologize for not having that.
No, it's
information
totally
sooner.
fine.
Yes, just Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, there was some confusion of trying to make sure we got a hold of the State Department and the State Board just to ensure that we were getting the correct information. So in the memo, it was not included because as of Friday, we were still just triple checking, and so we missed our deadline on that. But thank you for bringing that up for that clarification.
Got it. That was all I needed.
Okay.
Chairman, if I could say something. No, I wanted to thank you guys for putting this together. And to me, it makes sense. I'm not sure what the percentage of students go to college and what percentage go to a technical school or a trade school. But there's really, most trade school you don't need this stuff. And it just makes sense because those who go to school, they know that they can request it and it will be provided for them. I love this and I love the math as well. Because it's something that if they do go to college, they're not going to it's not going to be that easily to forget because sometimes I know how math it is. You know, you skip a year of it and dang, you're behind. So this is great.
One more question.
So Mr. LeBoux?
I think so. Sorry. I'm so sorry, Mr.
Well, it's
LeBoux.
his fault. He sits in the very, very back.
And just so that I understand, because we do so, there are so many requirements that we're surrounded by the SATs and the ACTs. How will that change for next year, or do we even know that yet? Because before we have the mandatory testing, so that will no longer happen. So for the kids who want to, will there be like a sign up?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Oh, good. So I'm feeling like,
we've actually kind of talked about that a little bit. Like we know that we have to provide that opportunity for students. The question is whether or not we take a school day to do that. So we have not actually made that decision yet, but giving up an entire school day for that assessment is kind of a big cost. So one of the things that the superintendent and Mr. Yarborough and I have talked about is maybe we do it on a day outside of a traditional school day.
and provide that opportunity for the students who want to.
Sure, Curricular Trustees, the concern is just losing valuable instruction time, knowing every second matters, every second counts, and to lose, as we were a whole day to an assessment that some students obviously very much need and valuable, but other students not so much. We had discussed possibly offering it traditionally, and that's how it used to be for many years, is you would take it on a non-school time or after school time.
I love it. I was just looking for clarification around it, just because that was the only part in there that I didn't see any on. That was my very last question.
Questions, apply them with food. They'll come on a non-traditional school day.
Chairman, can
Chick-fil-A.
I make a motion?
Trustee Dahlia, go ahead.
I move to approve the changes as outlined in the graduation requirements policy.
Do we need to say the first and final read? Does that have to be in it? Because I'm willing to second that. I just wondered.
I think interim superintendent Russell and I are thinking that it should be so they can implement it immediately to do it as a first and final read. So if we want to just read it exactly how it's in, it would just help so that they can implement it, and then we don't have to bring it back to the team.
Okay, so I move that we do a first and final read that we do a first and final report towards the 2700 high school graduation requirements and approve the changes as outlined in the policy.
I second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, going on to the next item is selection of superintendent search firm. And once again, I left all of my notes in a different bag, but we have
Chairman, for those that didn't attend the last meeting or watch the video, I was going to say movie. That means it's been a long day. Were you guys going to discuss possibly selecting top 3 still and interviewing them, or selecting? I think that's what you guys are going to discuss this evening, or possibly making a selection.
Yeah, so all of the above.
Okay.
My only real small concern is that we don't have the other 2 trustees here. That doesn't mean, I mean, we have a quorum, so we certainly can make a decision if that's what we choose. Was that the movie? That was the movie background, right?
That was ESPN. I know exactly what that was.
Well, we know what Randy's doing during these meetings. So that's my small concern is we need to move forward with this process, but do we have time to wait to have the other trustees a part of this decision, or what do you think?
Chair Kirkman, why don't we see what the 3 of us felt, and if we're all in consensus about our top 3, maybe that's not what's needed, and we can just discuss that this evening, because then if we're all on that same page of what our 3 were, if we're all 3 comfortable with that, at least we could make those decisions, and then with our other 2 trustees, we could choose everything else.
From those 3?
From those 3, how do you feel about that, Trustee Baye?
Sure. Okay, so that being said, and I hope I got the same ones that I made notes on before. Let's discuss. Okay, well, here are my top 3 after reading through these proposals. I like McPherson and Jacobson. I like them, if I remember, I'm going to pull this up so I'm not making it. I love the detail that they provide. I like the timelines. Let me scroll down here real quick to specifics. I like how they outlined the phases and were detailed in phase 1, phase 2, and then I even really like the checklist that they provided. I think which really takes a lot of guesswork out of this whole process. Plus, it makes it very transparent. So these tasks, these task lists, I really appreciate it. That's why I put that one as my first choice.
Second choice?
The second choice I had was Ray and Associates. Come back to that one. Ray and Associates, what stuck out to me with this proposal was their experience. The superintendent searches in so many different, I mean, that's like the biggest run-on sentence I've ever seen in my life, but they did list so many school districts and the experience that they had with those. That's what stuck out to me the most. Plus, they were very detailed in a lot of their procedures and the way they would go about handling this process. And then the third, it was a toss-up between Northwest leadership. I know they've had experience doing superintendent searches in the Northwest, particularly in Washington and Oregon. One thing that concerns me about Northwest leadership and their experience is heavy in Washington and Oregon, is that Washington and Oregon school districts are so completely different from Idaho school districts. And so I'm just thinking of like this community standards type thing. But they did, I think there was one, they did a superintendent search up in Coeur d'Alene, I believe. I think there was maybe one other district, but and then ISBA, so it was a toss-up. My third, Northwest leadership, and then ISBA. ISBA is local. They have experience in the local superintendent searches. Certainly their cost, which is actually a little bit concerning to me because it was so low that sometimes when you get a really low, I think it was like $8,000 for the proposal. I like that amount, but then the other side of me says, can they do a really good superintendent search for that amount of money? I don't know. That's something that we may have to ask the proposal later on, but those are my top three. With a toss-up between the third one.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so in no particular order, because I just picked 3, the McPherson and Jacobson, the Rays and Associates, and then the HYA. Big factor for me was the 2-year guarantee. And I loved the robust proposals because I feel like that would be very beneficial for our board specifically. There was a lot of things in there that I feel like they're going to go over above and beyond, and I loved how they would be primarily walking us through a lot of the processes. So those were my top three.
I like the guarantees too.
Loved the guarantees. The 2-year guarantees is what got me between HYA and Northwest Leadership.
I think we all picked McPherson and Jacobson. I only picked 2, by the way.
Oh.
And I also thought that we needed to keep it local, even though I don't know. Sometimes when the price determines quality, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, do they know something we don't? So those are the 2 that we.
You're talking about ISBA?
Yeah.
So you picked McPherson and ISBA.
Yes.
Okay, so we didn't really align on all 3, so do we want to wait?
Oh yeah, I think we aligned on one.
One.
Yeah, McPherson.
McPherson and Jacobson. And I did have ISBA as one of them, but it was a tie between Northwest Leadership and ISBA.
Yeah, Northwest to me was a big no.
Okay. Well, there you go. Now what?
I think that's up to the board. I do know that Trustee Simpson and Trustee Pearson, when they indicated to me that they were unable to attend, they did say tonight has some very important action items, but they were going to trust and support the board's decision. So I think it gives you guys leeway to do either way. Whether you guys, in the conversations you had, you guys first talked about just selecting one without doing an interview process. So you guys could still do that, or you can say, hey, we select these top 3, you talked about top 3, top 2, but you never made a motion of what. So I think whatever happens, the board will support.
So I do like, I mean, Ray and Associates was my second one, but I do like the HYA also. I think that was a very thorough proposal. And there's not a whole lot, I mean, there's some difference, but they do talk about the different phases in that proposal. I would be, sorry, I'm reading through this. McPherson and Jacobson, that's it.
That was all of us.
Yeah.
And so
did you have Ray and Associates?
I did. I had Ray and Associates and then the HYA.
And HYA, I'm good with HYA. What do you think, Trustee Valley?
And take out ISBA?
I mean, we can certainly invite 4.
We could invite 4.
Yeah,
if you guys both wanted to add ISBA, and we could invite 4, and at
Let's
least
do
we
that.
could do it.
Let's do that, because I
I'd
think
be okay with that.
I think that does give credence to local.
Yeah.
And let's have them present what they got.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement. Then we'll move along with 4, and then we'll move those to the interview process. Is that what we're wanting to do? Is go to
Yeah,
the
because
interview process?
I would like the other trustees involved with that process.
I would agree. I motion to accept.
How about we motion to interview?
Okay. I motion that we interview the following firms: HYA, ISBA, McPherson and Jacobson, and Rays and Associates.
A second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Chairman, I was just going to seek clarification. When you first discussed interviewing, you discussed either doing them all virtually, or inviting them all here. Are we still thinking virtually, or did you want to give them the option either way?
If we invite them here, is that a cost that this district bears?
I'm not sure. I think you guys were first. What the discussion was to have a virtual interview with all of them, and so I just want to clarify, because one is local. It's just making sure they were invited virtually as well, or if we're going to give everyone both options.
Yeah, wasn't our conversation before, Chairman, to do this virtually and then pick 1 or 2 to come and visit us, right?
Okay. So all of these 4 that we just selected will be done virtually.
Yes.
Will we give ISBA an option, since they're down the road, to show up
I have
in
no
person?
problems with that.
So I think we need to make that clear though.
You did discuss during that meeting that you were going to do all of them the same, so that they were all scored on the same.
We'll just do them all virtually then. Okay, that's the clarification. These 4 selections will be done virtually.
And to for me to get that meeting set as soon as possible, I assume.
Do you need us to put that in? Okay.
All right. Oh, yeah, we've already made a motion. We're done with that.
We're done.
Next item on the agenda is policy 2620, curricular materials.
Cherokee and Trustees, before us tonight is an informational item just for the board to consider around policy 2520, which has to do again with a law change in code during this past legislative session around curricular materials. Our current policy reads that at least a quarter of this committee must be persons of other public educators and trustees, and then the new law actually changes that, kind of highlights some requirements around it. You'll see a proposed possible policy, and clearly is just a proposal that has some red lines in it, but just mentions that the new selection for the committee to select curricular materials, that they shall be contain a membership of at least 1/2 of individuals that are not public educators or school trustees, and shall include parents of students attending school within the district. You'll see there in your board materials as well as ISBA's updated policy to reflect the current code as well. And the proposed policy that has a lot of the red lines in it was a combination of our old policy and the new law. But you'll also see ISBA's in there as well. So just presenting that for information and opening up the discussion and questions there.
What's the timeline for the staff on getting this policy changed?
I look at Mr. Knopf, but I think the timeline would be, Cherokee Trustees. The timeline that we do want to get started with curriculum adoptions, I believe by, I'm going to say December. I'm looking at him to see if
It's looking for an agreement or
November,
No later.
no later.
December
So
the latest.
I would say we would probably want to change in sometime October, November, so that our policy does match the procedure that we would go forward, and obviously to match Idaho code.
how long does it take usually to put a committee like this together? I mean, if this policy were adopted, let's say in October, November, how long is that going to push the process down even more to get a committee selected, or?
Cherokee Trustees, it often depends on the curriculum that we're adopting.
Okay.
So we're looking at possibly doing a literacy adoption coming forward, which is a very intense adoption because it's all of our literacy. I'm going to have Mr. Knopf maybe expand upon what his thoughts are. He thinks about this on a daily basis.
So on am I live? I don't think I'm live. I don't know why I'm talking to that when it doesn't work. One of the adoptions we need to address this year is K-5 VLA. And that's a pretty big adoption, so that's a big undertaking. And one of the important things there is the sooner we can get it done, on the back end, the delivery of materials, the exiting of the old materials, and that whole exchange of how that all gets swapped out, and the ability to do that in a timely manner, and so it's ready to roll when we hit the ground in August, is that's a huge undertaking.
Okay.
And the other piece that probably goes with that is pretty much everything we order seems to show up way later than we're used to. And so I am a little nervous that if we don't get rolling on this committee fairly soon and get an adoption in place late winter, early spring, this may not be available to us when school starts in August. And so I would say committee December is late, maybe sometime even in November would be better. And then we have the first kind of flush, so to speak, of a proposal for an adoption process that we presented to you folks. Obviously, that was before the actual statute came out, so the actual law is a lot more vague and provides us with maybe a little more flexibility on how we actually write that process and that procedure through the committees. So we're hoping we get this adopted so we know kind of where we're at, and then we'll present the procedure and then get rolling with that. The second piece with that is having a committee that's bill with half community and parents is also something that's new to us, so we're not real sure how long that'll take to build. It could be a couple of days. We could be out beating the streets trying to find some volunteers. So.
Yeah, I was wondering if that doesn't come together, that committee with half and half. Yeah.
Cherokee Trustees, one of the advantages that Mr. Knopf just mentioned was the law was very specific about the amount of requirements. Now it just says half. So obviously you want to have a representation of the community, but it doesn't dictate. I think it said 12 at one point.
The original was 12, so it was 6 and 6.
Yeah.
And they backed it off now and just said half.
Which makes it, even our district our size, that could be a challenge. But for a district like a Cambridge or something like that, yeah, it could be even smaller. So they did modify that.
So, Chair Kirkman, just overview. So this is a first reading. You're hoping that we'll accept this adoption, I would assume, at our next regular board meeting. Is that the hope with this being the information item?
I think that was the thought. So 1st of October, we have the policy in place. We can get moving on what that looks like on our end.
Wonderful. Thank you.
This is not necessarily a first reading, though.
Correct.
Okay, so does something more need to be done? If that's what we need to do, is take action by the next meeting for this process to take place?
We could put it as an action item at the next regular board
We could.
meeting, and then it would be to approve it as a first reading, or kind of like what we did this evening.
Do it all at one time.
Right. We don't always want to get in the habit of that, but you can do that.
Okay.
Chair Kirkman, just could I ask a question of Clerk Lamont? Ms. Lamont, could we do a first reading at our next regular board meeting? And if there were a special meeting, could we add that as an action item for a special meeting if it were to come up?
I would have to look at the current policy on how it's written, but if it's not specific at which meeting, we could. Some districts do it very specific at regular meetings, so I don't think it matters on the current policy here, but I would verify that, so I think we could do that.
Well, and that's kind of what I was asking about, those timelines. Because if we had to do a first and second, or a first, whatever, that's what I was asking about those. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Russell, policy 1250. So,
Chairman, I can leave that for.
I hadn't gotten to it yet.
Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Russell. I didn't mean to
Chair Kirkman's okay. I probably would just defer to Clerk Lamont.
In this policy, the committees 1250. When you start changing board committees, and you guys had expectations of board norms for board committees at a work session with Mrs. Mon. And I think the conversation was, it's all attached in here, is are we aligning the committees with the changes with the curricular materials after the legislation, or are we going to start aligning the board committees with our policy of your guys' board norms for committees that you wanted? And that would just be the discussion moving forward, is what updates do we need to make on that, if any? And this is just for guidance or just for food for thought. This doesn't say you have to do any currently. This is just on board committees in general.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more questions here because I just feel like every time we go into this, we're like stopped. I brought the last.
It's been a topic for quite a while.
Yeah, it's just been a topic without a lot of movement. So I brought, the last time we had this conversation, we were given information on an audit.
Meeting law, which they should have been, and so they're posted, they have minutes, and they're being updated the board. So that's where we talk about how are we moving forward, and I don't want to say live stream or recorded, but you guys have mentioned that as a team numerous times as well. So clarification on board committees versus the admin committees and how the board wants to move forward on those committees, and then what other updates we might need to make.
So love that it's here. Love that we're talking about it again. Would really like to understand what our next steps are so that we can get this finalized and this big committee's chunk moved forward. So love that it's an information item. Love that we're talking about it again. What are next steps here?
Well, goes right along with that question. We got an email from Ms. Callis, and she is resending. This is her email, and this is in public record. She is emailing because she desires to be on the calendar committee, and then she emailed again and said, "I'm resending this because I've not heard from anyone about joining the calendar committee." And my first thought was, is this how somebody would be selected to be on that committee? And so I think there's a lot of confusion, not only from us, but from people in the community who want to be a part of the committee.
Sure. Totally with you there. My question is this moving to another work session where we continue that important work from that previous work session? Is this moving to a place where we adopt a policy and then we align and we determine what those committees are? Do you all want me to make a decision and we'll move forward based on that suggestion? I mean, I'm throwing anything out
I think
here.
it would be very clear if the board, and maybe this does work in a work session, is this committee will be a board committee, this committee will be a board committee, this committee, and we just simply do that. Very clear direction.
So we're the ones, I'm sorry, Chairman, we're the ones that decide the difference between the board committee and the district committee? Or has that been decided by the state already, or by the?
I don't.
That's a question that.
So Chair Kirkman, trustees, there is state code that is a board committee of certain requirements that must be met, and so that state law doesn't have that. If it's an administrative committee, then usually that's the superintendent that will direct that, and the board could choose to put requirements around administrative committee, but it hasn't typically in the past practice on that. So, but there is a difference, and state code does require a board committee to have meeting minutes, postings, being them open to the public, some of those requirements.
And that also, board committees, the recommendation comes from the committee. So the recommendation to the administrative committee it shouldn't be the committee's recommendation. It should always be the superintendent's at that point.
With an administrative committee.
Right. And so the committee really does the presentation and does the recommendation, whether it is whoever you have leading that committee. But when it's a administrative committee, it doesn't have to follow open meeting law. They can meet behind closed doors, as we'll call it, and then they provide their updates and their recommendation to the superintendent, and then the superintendent will make their recommendations, and they can say the committee recommendation was this. But board committees, it is transparent, like whoever's on it, the names would be public. They would have minutes. The updates would be that a board member can sit on it, but the board can decide whatever committee they deem necessary or would like to see the district have. So you have that flexibility, but the administrative committees really are the superintendent working with them and then bringing the superintendent's recommendation.
And I think those are the biggest differences, that point and the open meeting.
Which is something I know the public probably wants more to be able to know more how those decisions are being made or what things are being talked about. And maybe we need to put our hand in there somewhere. Okay, so next steps.
Someone's gonna say a work session.
I mean, I don't feel like there's another option. So I really feel like this is going to have to be a work session. I just do, because there's still so many questions around committees. I do think because I hate putting anything with the books, but just because.
Well, we don't have to take a motion, so I will just put the board will have a work session on this topic, and then I'll work with the board to get that scheduled.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's,
That was awesome.
and we'll leave it up to the work session. It's 12:50. Yeah, at some point, we've got to get, hopefully sooner than later, we've got to get this nailed. Okay, I'm trying to get back to my, are there any other comments or questions on that particular topic? We don't want to forget about it, that's why we throw it on there. Okay, the next item is enrollment report. Dr. Russell, this is yours. Sorry.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, before you tonight is an enrollment report. I believe there was some conversation in our past board meeting by some trustees that wanted to see some information around our enrollment, particularly our enrollment the last several years. And so you'll see a report in there. There is one small error in that report. I just want to point out and just give clarity around it. It's the first one, the 2018 through 2022 enrollment summary by school. It shows that under 2022, Endeavor Elementary has 20 students. That's not accurate. There's more students in there. I've walked the building. There's 449 as of Power School today. So, but what that does is it'll show you the enrollments the last 5 years. You'll see there's a dip in 2020 around because of the pandemic and whatnot, but gives you some clarity around that. The next report there is an enrollment comparison report. Again, I think there was perhaps it was Trustee by that asked to see some information about our building capacities and where we are with students, and that gives you some information there based on kind of where we're at. And so most of our buildings are looking very good. We got plenty of capacity, and then there's a few like Nampa High that's really pushing it. But other than that, that New Horizons, we tend to be around 90% is a pretty good mark to be around utilizing your building. But again, I say that only general guidelines because some buildings are older than others, and being at 90%, for example, at maybe like a Central might be pushing it a little bit, just depending on the size because of the age of the building. And so there's some of that consideration there. So it just gives you general information.
Question. What is that for elementary schools? And I understand if you don't have this off the top of your head. For the average size classroom for our elementary schools, what does that look like?
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, trustees, we typically try to put 22 and under for K1, and then it's around 24 for second and third grade, and then 26 around for fourth and fifth grade. I'm looking at my teammates there, and then they are giving me the nod. So I remember correctly. So 22 for K1, 24 for second and third, and then 26.
Okay, that's what we'd like to see. But
Yes.
Is that where we're at?
It varies across the district. No, there's some that are more than that. There's six, 37. That's really high. But you also got to take in the demographics. It can be very beneficial when you're working on small groups or doing station rotation throughout on your instruction. So the para support can also be very beneficial as well. Again, hiring, it can be a challenge with that in our current situation where we are just across education across the country. But even here in our valley, it can be a little bit more difficult than in past years. But we try to balance as much as we can. So we do vary in class sizes, and we watch those. And we talk to our school administrators, we talk to the teachers, we try to get feedback that way. And then sometimes our parents will also give us feedback. We had a situation at Lake Ridge where we got a lot of input around that. We were trying to move a staff member to balance his classes as soon as we can. There were some concerns from parents that would hurt students, so we decided to hire a para in that case.
I appreciate the detail. I think these questions come up quite a bit, and I think that's really on a lot of parents' minds is classroom size. And I always have thought that the larger the classroom, the less instructional bandwidth there will be. And that makes sense, I guess, on the surface, but when you talk about these details and the things like that 8% of those students that are coming to class ready to go, I appreciate the detail because that does these questions that come up quite a bit.
I'm sorry. Trustees, I just want to add that I'm speaking elementary.
Yeah.
So then when we go into our secondary schools, of course, we look at our class sizes there. And just to add to what Chair Kirkman had mentioned, there are things that we consider on our secondary class sizes. One is the age of the students as well, the subject matter. And so, for example, you can have a larger PE class than you can a math class. And you'll see that. And then, of course, student schedules and credit requirements all do create a great variation within that. We typically print out a huge spreadsheet. We go through every section of our schools. The way we try to alleviate classes there is often schedule changes. We'll often ask our teachers if they would like to buy out a prep, which they can earn another $10,000 to teach an extra section of a course. We may hire if we need to as well. We may change sections, asking a student to go from third period to fourth period in math to balance a class. So we can kind of work those things that way. So I just want to make sure that you understand secondary a little bit as well.
Right. Trustee Taylor?
First, I want to say I really appreciate just even clarification on the Lake Ridge thing. I had heard wind of that, and it never came to us. And I love that it feels like procedure was followed there, where you guys dealt with that. And I just again love to hear things like that are happening because those are great conversations where our admin and our district are working with our community, and I love it. And those things happen all the time, so I just want to make mention of them. My next question was, because we do open enrollment, do we have any idea, like, for example, here, say, like with Roosevelt, where I have 609 kids, do I have any idea how many of those are open enrolled into Roosevelt? Or no, we're not able to? Yeah, we do.
Sure, Trustee Taylor, we do. We can pull all the open enrollments from each of the buildings and share with you how many are open enrolled at what building.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
No, I just want to thank whoever updated this. It gives such a clear picture, and it allows us to be able to ask questions if we see something. So thank you so much, and I appreciate the information given. Just one question really quickly, because we talked about class sizes. And is there any class in the school district right now that has over 40 students?
Chair Kirkman, Trustees, yes. Some of our PE classes are up in the 48s, 50s in our secondaries. There are some art classes that are pushing 38, 39. Just for clarification, I went down every one of our secondary classes that was over 35 and highlighted those all. I sat and met with our administration. I had our administration check with principals, and they started working on some of those schedule changes, and we're still in the process of doing that even right now. But every year we go through, pull out a major spreadsheet, like I mentioned, go section by section. I start with the number 35 and look at it, and then we go from there. So yes, we do have some, and some that's okay. It does fit in that, and others it's not good.
Trustee Taylor?
Thank you. Do we have in our master contract for teachers, do we outline a number, a threshold, like a number? Is that outlined in the contract?
Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, we do not outline a number. What we do have in our contract is the ability for the association to come to the administration to discuss concerns around class size class load. And Mr. Coffey and I have a meeting scheduled to go through that. He has brought some concerns around some schools, and we'll discuss that and we try to work on equitable solutions around that.
Thank you. So I didn't have to go read it for telling me the answer.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Finance and Treasurer Report.
Cherokee Trustees tonight, we have Mr. Dewey, who will be sharing with us updates around our budget.
Okay, you want to get into a presentation, everybody? Alrighty, so I'm going to do a really, really quick presentation. One of the things that we see around this time is when financials start coming out from the state, from us, and all these, a lot of people like to put out articles that show how flush we are as a district and how much money is coming in and everything. Most of all, I want to make sure people understand what these, what numbers are coming from and why this isn't necessarily the same thing. I've seen it now in a couple different articles. One from Chairman Jeff here, and then some others in the past. Idaho News has done the exact same thing. So if you guys want to go to the next one here. One of the things I want to make sure we understand is we always talk about fund balance. Okay, when I came on board, just to kind of keep this in future, is we were $6.5 million negative fund balance in the general fund. What that meant for us is that we had no money to even pay payroll in July and August, so we had to do payday loans. So that was our savings account in the general fund. Okay, we have since gone past that. Never go back there again, but that just makes sure that we're in there. And really what it is it means our assets are higher than our liabilities, right? Our cash and everything like that comes in better than our liabilities, okay? And then if you want to go to the next one.
Excuse me, without
Yes.
the mic, is this still being picked up?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a mic right now. Do I need to speak into this a little better? Sorry. It was clear.
No, I don't think you need to use it. I think it's being picked up on.
Oh, is it? So do I need Just kidding. Just kidding. Or I can turn my game back on if you guys want to. Denver's still losing, unfortunately. So there, in our financials, there's multiple funds. The main one we always deal with is the general fund. That's where most of our bills pay. That's where most of our teachers are. That's where most of our employees are. Our maintenance and all that kind of stuff. There are special revenue funds. These are like our title funds, our tech funds, our lottery funds. A lot of those type of things are sitting in our special revenue funds. Our debt service, obviously, we pull down taxes to be able to pay our debt. And then we have a fiduciary, which majority of those are our student body funds and our trust funds, our 3 trust funds, Trust and Health, SMA, and that. So if you want to go to the next one. In our general fund, what's in there right now? We have $12,718,000. Sounds like a ton of money, right? Well, reality is this breaks down into even more categories that we need to make sure we're aware of. The first one is inventory and prepaid. Those type items are things that are already spent. We're just sitting on shelves ready to be paid, or we've paid them in different ways to basically using up those services as we've been paying them, as we've already paid them. Those are not available for future purchases, okay? We have assigned, did we miss one? Go back. Oh no, let's go back, sorry, keep going. We have assigned, what that is these are the areas that where we've come to you, and we have others that, a good example of this is our school supply budgets. We allow them to carry them forward. We've done this for the last 6 years, I believe. And the reason for it is we always saw that year-end spend, get rid of your budget or it's gonna be gone. We basically wanted to stop that, to basically say, hey, look, if you don't need to spend it, we'll leave it over to next year and you can save it and use it up for some bigger purchase down the road. And so that's what people do. Sometimes they use it to help if they have an emergency staffing need and they didn't have funding or anything else. They sometimes will use that as well. And then we also do it for special purchases and projects. One of the things, remember, we assigned that's in our sign this year is the money that we did for the retention bonuses for teachers. That was approved last year to go into this year. Well, that's paid this year, but it's from last year's funds, those type of things. This is also the money that we've been talking about with the school supply budgets, furniture, and that stuff that we'll be talking about later on in October in the special meeting that we've been having. And this is last year's number, not this year's number, mind you. Go to the next piece. And then we also have a bunch of restricted numbers, okay? So the supplemental levy by law is restricted. We tell, even before the law created, we basically tell our patrons, this is what we're actually spending our money on. We have everything line item in our GL budget, and we actually even have the auditors check on it year by year to make sure that we really are spending it on those areas. So they test it every year, give us a clean opinion on that. So those are not able to be spent on anything other than what we've said they're going to be spent on. The state and federal, these are areas like our professional development, college and career. We have ICCP, which is our daycare union for kids with students with children. And a lot of those funds, like I said, they've come in already, but we can't use them other than the items that they've said. These do not include any of like our title funds or any of that kind of stuff. This is just things coming in from the state that have nothing to do with title. Okay, and go to the next one. And then our unassigned. This is the biggest one that we actually, I always talk about. When we actually have a policy, 711, that says we must be at 5% of our current year revenues. Right now, as at the end of 2021, we were actually at 4.3. One of the main reasons is because we had kind of bumped up with some of the COVID funds and revenues. We got, remember, those millions of dollars in funds, and I didn't feel like it was necessary to pull away from last year's budget to try to bump that up. So we basically left it at where it was. And now in the year end, what we're actually going to make it in the and then some. So when we get to that, we'll go there. But the unassigned is the most important because that truly is what our savings account is. This is available for future years. The issue is the moment of time it drops below 5%, that's when we start getting into issues of being able to make payroll and things like that because in the summer, because remember we pay July and August payroll for people that have been in schools when they're not even here. So that's how that works. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So on the big one that everybody includes every single time in these numbers is this debt service fund. So they look at us and say, you guys are flush with money because you have $39 million in the bank. Well, $21.5 million of it is debt service. Remember, we can ask for money in advance, 21 months in advance, in order to make sure we have the money in. So the good reason for that is this. We pull money in June and December. We get it basically in July and January for payments that come in August, September that we have to pay out. If we don't get it in advance, we actually don't have the money to actually pay the payments on time. So it's a timing issue. So we have to do our bonds based on fiscal year, but they come in on a calendar year, if that makes sense. So they have different timings that come in. So we actually have to pull that down in order to make sure we have the cash in the bank. If we don't have cash in the bank, they take it from us through our general supply money, and then we have to send it back and do it that way. So that's why. The other side of this is right at the end of the year. Like I said, we've just received our June payments. Basically, they came in July, but we don't have payments until August, September. So all our money's in, but our payment didn't go out until, so it's like, it looks really big. Well, you guys are overdoing your payment. Well, reality is all that money came in just to be spent in August and September.
So the article that I referred to, I brought this up to Superintendent Russell, and I'm sure everyone said it was Idaho News. That was just timely. That article probably should have came out in January, and that number would have looked a lot different.
So the problem is they always go to audited financials for anybody in the state, 630. Right. So to try to pull that number down any other time in the year, they actually don't have that information to be able to do a story like that. So they always go to audited numbers, which you can say, oh, these are audited. So yes, every single one of us has that. So most of our payments, interest payment is due in February and March, and main bond payments plus interest are due August, September. That's generally when the bonds are done in our. So you're correct. The timing has majority what to do. West Data has almost 80 million in theirs, but if you look at how much money they send out, it's really not that much.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't want to cast any dispersion on the article or anything like that. It was just literally the question of like, oh my gosh, this is going to raise a lot of questions in the community of why we're sitting on $40 million. That's what it looks like.
Yep. Every year when these come out, the exact same thing happens to us, and I get to do this presentation at the same time. So this is actually not new.
Copy and paste.
This is literally, and this will come out a lot of the time right before the legislators meet as well.
Right.
And then they'll basically say, look how much money you have. You don't need this. The same thing happened to us with the ESSER money as well.
Chair Kirkman, trustees. Mr. Dewey, if the public were to ever have questions around the fund balance, they always can reach out and set up a time to discuss it with you, and you're able to show them.
Yes, I mean that's the biggest thing. It's nothing we do is secret in the
Right.
finance. I mean, if anything, my department is probably the most open because we have to be. So, but yeah, it's easily shown where our numbers are. I mean, the frustration I have is really we as a district have really tried hard to keep our unassigned, like the excess money that's not restricted or set aside to a minimum, so we can give out as much as we can for the kids and the families and the parents of today. We tried not to accept, when we go through a bond, there are a lot of times Moody's and that will say many states are at like 20% for that unassigned. Some are even more. I always say if we're up to like 7 or 8%, people start to get really upset with us because they don't understand the magnitude of our budget. I mean, our general fund budget alone is $100 million. When you're talking $4 or $5 million, that sounds like a lot to a regular person. It's a lot to me if it was mine personally, but when we go through bills of $10 million a month, not including payroll sometimes, so it really isn't that much. So if you want to continue on. And these are our special revenue funds. I'm not going to go through all of them. We can go through, and there's different things in here, the reason why they're there. Nutrition services, the funny thing about nutrition is we always say we want to have enough in our savings account to have, to be sufficient. USDA has the exact opposite. They say you can't have more than 3 months. It's the craziest thing in the world. We get hit every time with that, but the hardest thing we have right now is that when we have this money to go buy things, because we don't want to put it in salary, because then if you put it in salary and you start dwindling it, then you have nothing and you have to make cuts. So we try to buy things, and those things are backordered like 6 months right now. So that's pretty fun. If you want to keep going, and then the fiduciary funds, like I said, are student body funds. $1 million sounds like a lot in the schools, but remember we have 26 schools. Elementaries don't really hold a lot. And our secondaries, when high schools do bring in a lot, but they also spend a lot. I mean, we probably each high school brings in probably $600 to $1 million each in revenues and expenses in a year.
So there's no TV deals with ESPN or
Not yet. We're trying with those new fancy boards to bring in money, but the unfortunate thing is Courtney down here hasn't figured out how to use them, so it's his own fault. I'll throw you under the bus, Courtney. Yeah. If you want to go to the next one. All right, so this is where we are, current state of finances. I've actually updated these with the numbers that we have. The audit is done, at least the testing is done, but we're not finalized with everything yet. We'll have that done here in a couple weeks. But if you want to say where we are right now, general fund, it did increase a lot, as you guys knew it would. And the reason for that was, remember what we had talked about all last year about the different things that we wanted to do with some of this extra money, and then we held off on doing some of those things until this year, until we figured out what we were doing. So that money is still there. The inventory and prepaids went down quite a bit. Supplemental levy, one of the reasons for that is you see that big maintenance number of 3.9. Remember what we did is we moved a lot of those facility needs that we had for HVACs to the ESSER funds, used the most restricted first, and then we're using these now to do other projects. The unfortunate thing is that we tried to do some other big projects this summer, but you can only do so many, and a lot of our contractors wouldn't even do it. And now, I mean, we really have a small window to be able to really do anything, and a roof project's $1 million or $1.5 million right now. Hopefully, with the downturn in some of the economy, some of this stuff will come our way with some pricing, and we'll be able to get some of these projects done a little cheaper now with this money sitting in hand. And then everything else is pretty much the same. Curriculum, Dr. Russell can talk about some of our concerns with some of the things that we heard that might happen. I guess West Data was double their cost that they thought was going to come out in one of their ELA adoptions.
Yeah, so Chair Kirkman, trustees, just speaking with some of the other superintendents, I know they are going through a K-5 adoption, which just tends to be one of our most intense, expensive adoptions. West Ada had apparently went out to get some bids and select it, and they came back double from what they were expecting. So inflation's hitting everything.
So that assigned number you see last year was 700,000. Now it's 3 million. And I will say the majority of what's in there right now is we did have 500,000 for that retention, the regular stuff for the schools. I have set aside in that assigned the $500,000 for the supply stuff that we had talked about, the $1 million for furniture that I set aside, and then I also set aside another $1 million for you guys to decide what you wanted to do with it. So that's $2.5 million that has been assigned to be used for this year. It hasn't been designated for exactly what you guys want to do, and those we can make those decisions when you guys want us to meet in the later part of October, I believe, is when we're doing that meeting. And the unassigned is literally a little over the 5% now, so we're back above our 5%. I will try to keep it around 5 or 6% for a reason, just because, like I said, the one thing I don't like to be able to sit in front of our negotiations teams or anything and say we don't have any money, and then come to find out there's millions of dollars we didn't give out. So really, we try to do what we can for everybody to keep teams going. My bigger concern is what's on the ESSER going forward, and in how we're going to be able to attract that. So one of the things we might want to do is that extra $1 million that I've got in the sign right now, we might want to hold on to it to make sure we have enough money to be able to do some
we
things
can
in the
discuss
future.
those details.
Yep. So that's it. I think that's all I got in there, right? Oh, and then the bond fund is down a little bit. Remember, we only pull $8 million each year, so we did get a great, great job from the county that both the county and us reduced our taxes. Are you going to speak to this in your presentation?
Cherokee Trustees, Mr. Dewey, no, I was not, but it'd be nice to share it, because I think it was a great email that we received.
So the county had not received the city's certification yet for taxes, but because we had turned ours in, and they had, the majority of Canyon County will go down in full taxes, dollars received from the organization. So what that means, even with the property value increases, no one should see a huge increase from our district or the county. So like I said, I don't think the city has gone a huge increase with theirs in proportion to the size of the city. So if that holds true, I think when those tax bills come out here pretty soon, we should actually be looking pretty good for our patrons. So, and then everything else is pretty status quo with what we're doing in the past. So I think that's the last one, right? Yep.
Yeah,
and that's where we are.
Budgets always have so much. When people ask me about the money, I do try to explain to them that there's a lot of this money that is restricted to what we can use it for.
Mm-hmm.
That is by state statute, it's by federal statute, it's by policy, whatever it might be. And so $39 million sounds like, oh my gosh, we should be doing whatever. We don't have the luxury of using that money the way we would like to sometimes. And so, state public budgets they're a beast. And kudos to you for keeping on top of things, but
kind of have to. It's my job.
Yeah, I know. I think there's just this constant education to our patrons that we're not sitting on $39 million that we can just use the way a lot of people think that we could use them, because that's not how our budgets work.
Yep.
So can this presentation be posted, or is it because it's not in the
So
board?
this one is not,
receive
because
it.
we weren't 100% sure. We didn't receive word back, so I have it here. These guys have it access, or I can send it directly to Ms. Law, and you guys can.
We'll get it there, because I think there's some patrons that may want to go back and refer to this.
And I can also put it in budget transparency in my stuff too, so I don't have to go through the board stuff. In this month's board agenda stuff, I can just put it in there like I did in the other stuff. We'll put it in there.
We can have it.
Yeah, it's easy. And we're going to harp on this big time when we have other discussions later on.
It may,
Go ahead, Trustee.
Chairman, it may be a good idea to send this presentation to the newspapers as well.
Yeah, I've tried for many times to have them
Send it
stop.
on them.
Yeah, at least, they like to make stories that fit their world, and this is one of them that I constantly have to.
But thank you so much. I mean, your explanation, data, and the work that is being carried out compared to how it was when you first started, big changes. It's a different world here. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys have any questions on the actual financials for this month? The one thing you'll notice is we still have a lot of expenses yet, because truly our expenses start in September when all of our school-based people start working and get paychecks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, guys.
Superintendent report, Dr. Russell.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, just a few things to highlight in the superintendent's report. We did open school. It has been a nice opening. Walking buildings, it's been great to see our staff and our students back. I use the word normal. It does feel normal. We got athletics going, activities going. It's a really good time of year. And it's been great. So it's been a good opening. Enrollment, we just talked about that, so I'm not going to touch base on that. You're able to see that a little bit. Overall, just to highlight a little bit, we are up in enrollment, not as high as I was thinking. And I was originally thinking we were up about 300 students. And what happens in the beginning of the year, our preschool students are not loaded in Power School. And our number was showing a little high. And every year students come and they move. And so we typically drop from that initial enrollment. And what happened is when we were dropping, we were enrolling our preschool students. And so that number was staying a little bit more higher than I expected. Going back and just double, triple checking, I realized I caught my ear. So we're up, I think, about 75 to 100 students. And I use proximities because every day our enrollment changes. I mean, that's what's hard. I can come in every morning and look at our enrollment and we'll be up 15 to 18. We might be down 4. And so it does change. So just proximity-wise, thinking of where we were last spring, we budgeted around 13.4, so we are right now sitting at 13,676 on my last look. 200 of those are preschool students, and we do not receive funding for that. So we use the number of 13,476 is what we would use as far as the students that we would generate.
Right at budget then.
Very close to budget, yeah. So we were, and overall that's good because we did have a charter school that opened this year that we lost. I think at this point I can report 62 students to that charter school. And so considering that we stayed, we budgeted flat, we didn't budget down, and we're actually a little bit higher than budget, it's a good sign. So just updates on enrollment there. Class sizes we talked about, I'll pass that. Facilities update, I'm going to have Mr. Stauffer here in a second come just share some information around where we are with some facilities. And lastly, I just wanted to talk through the Steered Street again, just highlight that. I know that was, it was just great to see the need that we have of our students to understand about the dangers of drugs, alcohol, the vaping, which is just an epidemic of that, and the dangers of the things that can be put in those devices. They're not regulated. There is no ingredients on those vape things, and so just a great awareness for that. Really appreciate the parents in the community that came out to those nights that we had. Would love to possibly have another night at some point for our community to be able to learn about it. Just really good information on that. I'm going to ask Mr. Stauffer if he would come up at this time. He's going to share just a few updates of where we are with our facilities.
As he's walking up here, just a quick question on Steered Street. Have you received any comments or feedback from staff on what they thought about that?
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, trustees. Yes, I have. For the most part, staff thought it was very positive. Our administrators thought it was very positive. There were a few folks that had some questions about the content that was shared and who Mr. DeLeon was. But overall, it has been a positive feedback from the staff, and felt that it was worth having our students attend those.
The floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chairman Kirkman, Board of Trustees. We have been busy, as you know, trying to get school ready. We issued over 13,000 one-to-one devices this year, getting out to all of our students, and we were able to accomplish that in pretty short order. So again, just want to acknowledge that for our buildings and also from our IT department. Monumental undertaking. That we do that this year was a little bit higher just because we had our high schools were swapping out to brand new ones as well. So lots of work went into that in this process. So just want to acknowledge that work as part of our facilities team. We had a fun beginning as well with the weather that we've had. We had over 227 of our HVAC units went down during the first month of school. We have been working nonstop on making sure that our environments are comfortable for our students. As you've heard a little bit about the fun process right now of acquiring even new units, there are some units that are 30 weeks out. So we're having to become very creative in how we manage our classrooms, which we have been doing to the best of our ability. So I just want to acknowledge our maintenance team as well. We only have 2 HVAC personnel on our team. So looking at having 227 units go down was a monumental weight on their shoulders. We did have to bring in some third parties to help us with getting things back online. But we're really excited this week that the weather has turned away from the 100-degree weather. So we're excited about that. That will help as well. But just some information there that also kind of looks at the age of some of our buildings and some of our units are not being able to maintain some of the wear and tear that they received this summer. With that as well, we're also moving into some more security features. As we talked about and have been lots of discussions around vaping right now, we are moving forward with installing vapes into the rest of our middle schools and to our high schools. Those vape sensors will be installed here in the next 2 to 6 months as we're working through that process right now. We had done some work previously, and so now we're looking at the implementation. We've had 2 test sites in the 2 middle schools that has helped us with that process. So we'll be starting to upgrade those as we move forward here in the near future. Also in security, we are looking at adding some fencing in some of our areas, of our elementaries in particular. We're looking at and have received some bids, and so those will be starting to move in here shortly as well. I just wanted to make you aware of a few of those things that we're doing. Heavy at work, lots of things that are going on besides that, but just those are a few things we want to just update the board with.
When you say fencing, you're talking like perimeter fencing around
Correct.
elementary schools?
Yes, we have some schools when they were built. There's some wide open spaces that we need to bring in a little bit more. We're not talking about lock and key. Bringing those down to where there's a prison type of feel. I use that lightly, but in the sense that we need to help mitigate both entrances of who's coming onto our campuses and also helping with defining some lines for our little ones as well. So some of our sites were just built a little bit different, and so we're just kind of making them more in line with what our standard is.
Mr. Stauffer, could you share just in general, what is a vape sensor? What does that look like?
Sure, a vape sensor, to go back to what that looks like. They're actually look like little hockey pucks with a little disc on top. So they're about this big, and they will look somewhat like a smoke detector. And they will be, what they can do is they can determine HTCP. They can see that out of vape sensors, and also that is to help us with marijuana, that drug that's in marijuana. It will be able to detect that. What they do is they sit out of our high traffic areas, and once those sensors go off, they coordinate with our cameras, which will kick our cameras on and alert security. So it really helps us to get a better picture of where that vaping is taking place in our buildings, and then alert staff so that we can attend to it appropriately. So it's a really integral system now, I think, for looking at this big need of vaping that we're hearing and seeing and sensing in our schools.
And I'm sorry.
Please ask more.
Is this just for students or for teachers' bathrooms as well?
So on campus, there's no smoking allowed on any of our campuses. So it'll be for adults as well. Yeah.
I know there's not.
But yeah, it's for whoever is on our campuses.
They've just made
You're on our
it
campus.
so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not in the old days. They'd have to light up a cigarette. It was so easy.
Sure,
It
sure.
was so easy to spot. And then after taking that presentation with all the places they can hide vapes and the patches for the vapes, yeah.
This is just one more step to show in our community, in that we are trying to help out. We're trying to notify these earlier so that we can get that information to parents, because I really think that's one of the biggest supports of having a system like this, is that as a parent that we can help you and understand that this is happening. And when we make those calls, they're not always the derogatory calls about, hey, we caught your kid vaping. It's, hey, we need to inform you, and that we need to work through that process. So I think also it helps us to catch some things before it gets to the levels that we saw through the presentations.
Chair Kirkman, can I just get an example of one of the schools who've had to have updated fences?
Sure.
Just
we're looking at Endeavor and Roosevelt are two
Perfect.
specific ones.
I thought of Roosevelt when you said that. I just wanted to give everybody a visual.
Yep.
So 227 units went down. How many are back up? Do you know?
We're up about 210 right
Oh,
now.
very good.
So we're working through them. Some we're having to broker different systems. An example is a system like Centennial is old, 1976. It's the original system that we kind of just patched. Currently, we can no longer patch that anymore. It's one of the systems that I mentioned is about 30 weeks out for us to be able to get a unit that would fit in the current ductwork and everything else that it functions. It's about that far out.
Like the one with the bellows.
Looking pretty close, right? It's actually pretty massive. We actually have to bring it down into the school. It's not one that you can work on top of the school, so we also have to do it outside of school hours as well. So there's certain ones like that that are more cumbersome for us to bring back online. But we're looking at different options of how do we keep circulating air to make it comfortable for kids.
Because the cold weather is not that far away.
Correct, and then we'll be moving into the heating aspect of this conversation. But we're trying to keep ahead of it the best that we can. And again, we're just starting to see some of the age on some of our buildings.
Well, kudos to your maintenance.
They're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
That is just a thankless job.
It is. Every day you wake up, you're working into problems.
Yeah, and you don't realize it until
Mhm.
you take them for granted until something goes wrong. No, I get it. No,
Yep.
Thank you to your staff too.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments?
No, thank you for the update,
Thank you.
Mr. Stalker.
Okay, we are to item number 9. So possible agenda items for future board meetings. I think Trustee Dahlia may have referenced.
Yeah, a couple of them, and I'm not sure if it was noted.
I did start indicating them on here. I have school safety and security. We have our finance workshop. We have superintendent search firm interviews. We have work session on policy 2510 and 1250, including procedure on challenge books. And then also, I think that safety and security kind of qualified all of yours, and then also including some definitions on some terminology.
Right, and I also mentioned cell phone policy.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other?
I like the cell phone policy as well, just because, well, you know, one of my kids was the culprit, so, there was that. There was a little one too, of course. But I would really like to know and understand as well what people in our buildings would like to see. I can't imagine that teachers wouldn't be in alignment with that if we had cell phones in the bags and everything else. But I would really love, if we're going to throw that on there because I love the idea of it, I would like to get a really good idea of, you know, what's working, what's not within the schools, how they're handling it already. Because I know that, well, my child chose to take a stand for their earbuds. I don't even know why. But that being said, I would just like to hear what they feel would be effective, because I do think that cell phones cause a huge distraction.
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, Trustee Taylor, I'm happy to get some feedback on that. It would also, it is getting more and more common to have a smartwatch in that as well. So cell phones, earbuds, smartwatches, I think we need to have a conversation around all of that.
I would love to. Thank you. And then the final thing I want to add is the Steered Straight vaping curriculum. At some point, I would really love to discuss some type of curriculum around vaping as well. Gosh, that presentation was just so informative. And I think that there's a lot of confusion with children, and a lot of people believe that vaping somehow is a healthier alternative to smoking, even like nicotine or cigarettes. And so I really loved that vaping curriculum really talks about, truthfully, the hazards of it and what it does to the lungs and so on and so forth. So that was another thing I wanted to plug here.
And if you don't mind, Chairman, I just wanted to mention, I know a while ago, I think I mentioned to Superintendent Russell about a mental health curriculum that Steer Straight has in their website that is free and available for everyone. And I really think it needs to be looked at because it focuses more on suicide prevention and mental health of our kids.
So, just for clarification, when we say the word curriculum, that's where I get hung up a little bit, because when I hear curriculum, I'm talking about the approved curriculum that the teachers are teaching in their classrooms, and these are some ancillary type programs more than curriculum. So I just want to make sure that we're getting that.
Yeah.
We're making that.
Yeah, this would be more optional, but that's why I wanted to throw it out so that they can be turned into discussion, so that full discussion could be had.
Great, perfect, thank you. And I agree with all of those, like cell phone policy, it's time to have it too, or cell phone, not policy, but cell phone. So that being said, is there anything we're missing? Dr. Russell, I'll give you final words. You don't have to have any, just give you the final
Chair Kirkman, trustees, no comment.
All right.
Chairman Kirkman, if you could give me a moment while I call Trustee
Yeah,
Simpson.
so before we move into executive session, we do need to get Trustee Simpson on the phone because we need 4 to go into executive session. She's trying to ring her. And then when she gets her on the phone.
Hi, Mandy. We just need you on the phone to help us get into executive session this evening.
Okay. I move that we go into executive session to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, or public school student. B, to consider records that are exempt from disclosure as provided in Chapter 1, Title 74, our Idaho Code.
I second.
It's been motioned, the motion's been made, it's been seconded, so roll call?
Chairman Kirkman,
Yes.
Trustee Taylor,
Aye.
Trustee Bellet,
Aye.
Trustee Simpson.
Aye.
All right, we'll move into executive session.
Thank you.
than we are.
They're ready tonight.
Are you unmuted? Okay.
Ready? Okay, we are adjourning at 8:11.